My name is Sage Rivera and I'm 28 years old. Last Tuesday, I was reviewing quarterly reports in my corner office when my phone buzzed with a call from my parents. What started as their usual small talk quickly turned into something that would shatter everything I believed about family loyalty. Sage, honey, we need to discuss Marcus's loan situation. $700,000 is a lot, but as his sister, it's really your duty to help him out. I smiled into the phone, but inside a cold realization was crystallizing that would change our family forever. Before we dive into this wild family betrayal story, I'm curious. Where are you watching from today? If you're ready for a revenge tale that'll make your jaw drop, smash that like button and hit subscribe because I won't believe how this unfolds. Trust me, the family drama gets absolutely insane, and the ending, pure justice. Now let me tell you exactly how my perfect family mask came crashing down. The thing about growing up as the responsible one in a family is that you become invisible in the worst possible way. While my younger brother Marcus was celebrated for every mediocre achievement, I quietly built a successful career in financial consulting, bought my own home, and saved diligently. My parents always praised Marcus as their golden boy, the charming one, the social one, the one with big dreams. Meanwhile, I was just dependable Sage, the daughter who'd always be there to clean up messes. But $700,000. That wasn't just a mess. That was financial suicide. After ending that disturbing call, I couldn't focus on work. My parents' casual assumption that I'd bail out Marcus felt like a slap across the face, but something deeper was bothering me. How does a 26-year-old marketing coordinator even qualify for a loan? That massive Marcus worked at a mid-tier advertising agency, splitting rent with 3 roommates. His biggest financial accomplishment was buying a used BMW that he constantly posted on social media. That evening, I called my college friend Riley, who worked in commercial lending. Hey, hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted a $700,000 business loan, what would they need? Riley laughed. Hypothetically, they'd need stellar credit, significant assets for collateral, a bulletproof business plan, and probably a co-signer with serious financial backing. We're not talking about a car loan here, Sage. That's serious money. A co-signer with serious financial backing. My stomach dropped as the pieces started clicking together. I hung up and immediately pulled my credit report. Everything looked normal, until I noticed a hard inquiry from 6 months ago that I didn't recognize. Then another, and another. 5 unauthorized credit checks from different financial institutions. My hands were shaking as I called the credit bureau's fraud line. The representative was helpful, but delivered news that made my world tilt sideways. Miss Rivera, it appears someone has been using your social security number and financial information to apply for various loans and credit lines. The most recent application was approved for $700,000 through Mountain Peak Business Lending. Approved using my information, yes ma'am. You're listed as the primary borrower. The room spun around me. I wasn't just being asked to bail out Marcus. I was already legally responsible for his debt. He'd stolen my identity and forged my signature to secure a loan that could destroy my financial future. Worse yet, my parents knew. They had to know. Their casual phone call wasn't a request for help. It was damage control. I spent the next 3 hours on the phone with Mountain Peak Business, lending my bank, and a fraud attorney. The picture that emerged was devastating. Marcus had used my personal information, forged my signature on numerous documents, and somehow provided enough financial documentation to convince the lender that I was starting a consulting business. He'd even used my tax returns, which meant he'd accessed my personal files somehow. The attorney was blunt. This is serious federal fraud, Miss Rivera. Identity theft, forgery, wire fraud. Your brother is looking at potential prison time. But here's the problem, until you officially dispute these charges and press criminal charges, you remain legally responsible for the debt. What about the money? Where did it go? That's what we need to find out. I'd recommend hiring a forensic accountant to trace the funds, but I have to warn you, proving fraud and recovering stolen money can take years. I hung up, feeling nauseated. $700,000. My credit was already being destroyed by missed payments I didn't even know existed. My savings, my home, my entire financial life was now tied to my brother's criminal activities, but the betrayal cut deeper than money. This wasn't some desperate mistake or moment of poor judgment. The level of planning required, accessing my personal documents, forging signatures, creating fake business documentation. This was calculated, premeditated theft. Marcus had spent months systematically destroying my financial security, and my parents were trying to manipulate me into accepting responsibility for his crimes. I needed proof of their involvement, and I knew exactly where to find it. Growing up, my parents kept important documents in a fireproof safe in Dad's home office. I still had a key from when I helped them organize their estate planning 2 years ago. If Marcus had accessed my tax returns and personal information, there was a good chance he'd gotten them from that safe. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to my childhood home. Mom and Dad were both at work just like every Tuesday for the past 15 years. I let myself in through the back door and went straight to the office. The safe was exactly where I remembered, hidden behind Dad's diplomas and family photos. My hands were steady as I entered the combination. Mom's birthday, like always. Inside, I found exactly what I was looking for, and so much more. There were copies of my tax returns for the past 3 years, with sticky notes in Dad's handwriting. Photocopies of my driver's license and social security card. Most damning of all, there was a manila folder labeled Marcus Business Loan containing detailed notes about my income, assets, and credit score. At the bottom of the pile, I found a document that made my blood run cold, a power of attorney form with my forged signature dated 6 months ago. My own parents had helped orchestrate this theft. I photographed everything with my phone, my hands shaking with rage and betrayal. These weren't the actions of desperate parents trying to help a struggling child. This was systematic fraud, planned and executed by the 3 people I'd trusted most in the world. As I was putting the documents back, I heard a car door slam in the driveway. Panic shot through me as I quickly closed the safe and crept to the window. Marcus's BMW was parked behind my car, blocking me in. He was early. I had maybe 30 seconds before Marcus walked through the front door. My heart was pounding, but my mind was surprisingly clear. Instead of panicking, I felt a cold, calculating calm wash over me. This was the moment that would define everything. I could either confront him emotionally and accomplish nothing, or I could be strategic and gather the evidence I needed to destroy him legally. I quickly moved to Dad's desk and opened my phone's voice recording app, then slipped it into my jacket pocket. If Marcus was here, it wasn't a coincidence. He probably knew I'd discovered the loan, and he was either here to do damage control or grab more of my personal information. The front door opened, and I heard Marcus's familiar whistle echoing through the house. He was acting casual, which told me everything I needed to know about his mindset. He still thought he was in control of this situation. Sage. His voice carried surprise but not panic. "What are you doing here?" I stepped out of the office, forcing my expression into confused concern rather than the murderous rage I was actually feeling. "Hey, Marcus. I was just picking up some old photo albums for Mom's birthday surprise. What brings you by?" He relaxed visibly, that charming smile spreading across his face. The same smile that had gotten him out of trouble our entire lives, the same smile that had apparently convinced our parents to help him commit federal crimes. "Oh, just grabbing some paperwork for Dad. Business stuff." He gestured vaguely toward the office. "Actually, this is perfect timing. I heard Mom and Dad called you about my loan situation." "Yeah, they mentioned something about $700,000. I kept my voice neutral, curious rather than accusatory. "That's a huge amount, Marcus. What kind of business are you starting?" His laugh was too loud, too forced. "It's complicated, market research, startup costs, equipment leasing. The consulting world is expensive to break into, but the potential returns are massive." Consulting world. He was using my actual career as his cover story. "That makes sense," I said, nodding thoughtfully. "Although, I'm curious how you qualified for such a large loan. When I started my consulting business, the banks barely wanted to give me $50,000, even with my established client base and business plan." For just a moment, his mask slipped. I saw calculation in his eyes, the quick mental scramble of someone trying to keep their lies straight. "Well, I had some help with the application process. You know how these things work. It's all about presentation and having the right co-signer. Co-signer, I kept my voice light, interested. That's smart. Someone with good credit and assets, I assume. Yeah, exactly. Someone who believes in the vision, he was getting more comfortable now, probably thinking he was successfully manipulating me. Actually, that's kind of why Mom and Dad wanted to talk to you. The co-signer situation is a bit complicated and we might need some family support to make the payments work. I felt a surge of admiration for my own self-control. He was standing there casually discussing how he'd used my identity to commit fraud, and I was managing to have a normal conversation instead of strangling him. I see. And this co-signer, they're okay with the family stepping in to help with payments. Marcus's smile became more genuine, probably because he thought he was winning me over. Well, here's the thing, Sage. The co-signer is actually you. There it was. The casual admission of felony fraud recorded on my phone. I let my expression shift to confusion. I'm sorry, I never co-signed anything for you, Marcus. Right, well, technically you didn't know about it. His tone was becoming more patronizing, like he was explaining something simple to a child. But Dad helped me with the paperwork, and we used your information because your credit is so good, and your income qualified for the loan amount. It was easier than going through all the formal co-signer paperwork. You used my information without telling me. Look, Sage, I know it sounds bad when you put it like that, but think about it practically. You're successful, you're stable, and this loan is going to make us both rich. Once my business takes off, I'll pay back every penny with interest. You'll actually make money on this deal. The casual way he discussed committing multiple felonies was breathtaking. He genuinely seemed to believe that potential future profits justified stealing my identity and destroying my credit. But Marcus, if you used my information, doesn't that make me legally responsible for the loan? Technically, yes, but that's just paperwork. The important thing is that we're family, and family looks out for each other. He stepped closer, putting on his most sincere expression. I know this is a lot to process, but I need you to trust me on this. I've got everything under control. And Mom and Dad are okay with this arrangement. They're the ones who suggested it, actually. Dad said you'd understand once we explained everything properly. He said you've always been the responsible one, and responsible people do what's necessary for family. I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. This wasn't Marcus going rogue and forging documents behind our parents' backs. This was a family conspiracy with my own parents actively participating in my financial destruction. I see, I said quietly. And what happens if your business doesn't work out? What happens if you can't make the payments? Marcus waved dismissively. That's not going to happen. I've got connections, I've got plans. But even if something goes wrong, you make enough money to handle the payments temporarily. It's not like it would hurt you financially. $700,000 wouldn't hurt me financially. He was completely delusional about both his business prospects and my ability to absorb this level of debt. Well, this is certainly a lot to think about, I said carefully. I appreciate you being honest with me about the situation. I knew you'd understand once you heard the whole story. You've always been the smart one in the family. He was practically glowing with relief and satisfaction. So we can count on your support. I smiled at him, the same kind of smile I'd been giving our parents my entire life when they chose Marcus over me for the 1,000th time. Let me think about it and get back to you. The drive home from my parents' house felt surreal. I had a recording of my brother casually admitting to identity theft, fraud, and conspiracy, along with photographic evidence of our parents' involvement. Most people would have gone straight to the police, but I'd spent 28 years watching Marcus charm his way out of consequences. I needed to be smarter than that. That evening I called my fraud attorney, Sandra Martinez, and played her the recording. The silence on the other end was telling. Sage, this is a prosecutor's dream case. Your brother just confessed to multiple federal crimes and he implicated your parents as accessories. The evidence you've gathered is devastating. But will it stick? Marcus has been talking his way out of trouble his entire life. Our parents have connections in the community and they'll probably hire the best defense attorneys money can buy. Sandra's laugh was grim. They can hire Johnny Cochran's ghost and it won't matter. Financial fraud cases are about documentation and paper trails, not charm. Your brother used your social security number to obtain $700,000 under false pretenses. The money trail will show exactly where every penny went, and federal prosecutors love cases with clear evidence and cooperative victims. Cooperative victims. You're going to have to testify, Sage. This will likely go to trial, and your family will probably paint you as vindictive and money-hungry. Are you prepared for that level of scrutiny and conflict? I thought about Marcus's casual dismissal of my financial security, about my parents' assumption that I'd simply absorb the consequences of their crimes, about 28 years of being taken for granted and treated as the family's safety net. I'm prepared. The next morning, I took a personal day and drove to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Special Agent Diana Ross. Yes, that was actually her name, and yes, she'd heard all the jokes. Was a sharp woman in her 40s who specialized in identity theft and fraud cases. Miss Rivera, I have to tell you, we see a lot of family financial abuse cases, but this level of premeditation is unusual. Your brother and parents didn't just steal from you. They created an elaborate criminal enterprise using your identity. She walked me through the process, filing formal complaints, pressing criminal charges, and working with federal prosecutors to build an airtight case. The investigation would involve forensic accountants tracing the $700,000, digital forensics experts analyzing the forged documents, and interviews with everyone involved. What happens to the money? I asked. That depends on where it went and what assets can be recovered. If your brother spent it on depreciating assets or lifestyle expenses, you might not recover much. But if he invested it or bought property, we can potentially seize those assets as proceeds of crime. Agent Ross assigned a forensic accountant named David Chen to trace Marcus's spending. Within 48 hours, he'd uncovered a spending pattern that was even more infuriating than I'd imagined. Your brother didn't start a business, David explained during our meeting. He used the money to invest in cryptocurrency, luxury purchases, and what appears to be gambling. There's a paper trail showing significant losses in online trading platforms and several large cash withdrawals in Las Vegas. $700,000 gambled away and invested in digital coins that had since crashed. My financial future had been destroyed to fund Marcus's delusional get-rich-quick schemes. How much is recoverable? Maybe $200,000 if we're lucky. The cryptocurrency investments are down 80%, and the cash gambling losses are obviously gone forever. There's a Rolex watch, some designer clothing, and about $50,000 in a checking account that hasn't been seized yet. I felt nauseated. Not only had Marcus destroyed my credit and committed multiple felonies, he'd been so incompetent that he'd lost most of the stolen money through sheer stupidity. But the investigation revealed something even more disturbing. Agent Ross called me 3 days later with an update that changed everything. Sage, we've uncovered additional fraudulent accounts in your name. It appears this has been going on for over 2 years, not just 6 months. Your brother has been systematically using your identity to open credit cards, take out smaller loans, and even establish business accounts. The total amount we've identified so far is approaching $1.2 million. $1.2 million. My legs gave out and I had to sit down on my kitchen floor. There's more, she continued. We've identified at least 6 other victims, friends and extended family members whose identities were also used. Your brother appears to have been running a sophisticated identity theft operation with your parents, providing access to personal documents and family financial information. This wasn't just about me anymore. Marcus had been systematically victimizing people in our social circle, using family connections to gather the personal information needed for his fraud schemes. Our parents hadn't just betrayed me, they'd been accessories to a criminal enterprise that had hurt multiple families. I called my cousin Rebecca, who'd always been close to our family. She'd mentioned having credit problems recently, but I hadn't connected it to Marcus. Rebecca, this might sound strange, but have you had any unexplained credit issues lately? Any accounts you didn't open or charges you didn't make? The silence was telling. Actually, yes. About 18 months ago, I started getting bills for a credit card I never applied for. The credit card company said someone used my social security number and address, but I couldn't figure out how anyone got that information. Did you ever give that information to Uncle Jim or Aunt Linda for any reason? Family emergency insurance forms, anything like that? Well, yes, actually. When I was applying for that apartment last year, Aunt Linda offered to help with the application paperwork since she works in real estate. She said she could expedite the approval process through her contacts. Aunt Linda was Mom's sister. The criminal network was even larger than we'd initially discovered. Over the next week, Agent Ross and I contacted 6 other potential victims from our extended family and friend network. All of them had experienced mysterious credit problems, unauthorized accounts, or fraudulent charges. All of them had at some point provided their personal information to my parents or other family members for seemingly legitimate reasons. Marcus wasn't just a thief. He was the center of an organized crime family that had been preying on their own relatives and friends for years. The scope of the investigation expanded rapidly. Federal prosecutors were now building a RICO case, racketeering influenced and corrupt organizations, against Marcus, my parents, and 3 other family members who had been involved in gathering and processing victim information. This is going to be a major case, Agent Ross warned me. Federal RICO charges carry serious prison time, and the media attention will be intense once the indictments are unsealed. Your family will likely try to pressure you to drop the charges or refuse to cooperate with prosecutors. As if on cue, my phone rang. Mom's contact photo filled the screen, smiling and innocent from our last family Christmas together. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message with Agent Ross. "Hi, sweetheart, we really need to talk. There seem to be some misunderstandings about Marcus's loan situation, and we think there might be some confusion about paperwork. Could you come over for dinner tonight? We can sort all of this out as a family without involving outsiders in our private business." Agent Ross raised an eyebrow. "They know about the investigation." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Hey sis, heard you've been asking questions about my business stuff. Let's grab coffee and I'll explain everything properly. No need to make this complicated." They were trying to control the narrative just like always. But this time I had federal agents, forensic accountants, and a paper trail that couldn't be charmed or manipulated away. The war was just beginning, but for the first time in my life I held all the cards. I decided to attend my parents' dinner, but not alone. Agent Ross wired me with a recording device and positioned surveillance outside the house. This wasn't just about gathering more evidence. It was about giving my family one final chance to tell the truth before their world collapsed. Walking into my childhood home felt like entering enemy territory. The same family photos lined the hallways, the same smell of Mom's vanilla candles filled the air, but everything had changed. These people had systematically destroyed my financial life while smiling at holiday dinners and asking about my job. Mom had prepared my favorite meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes, like this was a normal family gathering instead of a criminal conspiracy meeting. Dad sat in his usual chair, looking uncomfortable but determined. Marcus lounged on the couch, still radiating that insufferable confidence that had protected him his entire life. "Sage, sweetheart, sit down," Mom said, her voice dripping with artificial warmth. "We need to clear up some silly misunderstandings." I sat across from them, maintaining eye contact with each family member. "What misunderstandings?" Dad cleared his throat. "Well, it seems you've been talking to some government people about Marcus's business loan. We're concerned that you might have gotten some incorrect information about the situation." "What incorrect information?" Marcus leaned forward, still wearing that patronizing smile. "Look, Sage, I know the paperwork stuff seems confusing, but everything I did was perfectly legal. I had permission to use your information for the cosigner stuff." "Permission from who?" "From Dad. He has power of attorney over family financial matters, so technically he authorized the use of your credit information for family business purposes." The lie was so brazen, so easily disprovable, that I almost laughed. There was no such power of attorney, and even if there was, using someone's identity to obtain fraudulent loans would still be multiple felonies. "I see. And the other family members whose identities were used, did Dad have power of attorney over them too?" The temperature in the room dropped noticeably. Mom's smile faltered and Dad's face flushed red. "What other family members?" Mom asked, but her voice was strained. "Rebecca, Uncle Tom, the Johnsons from church, Aunt Mary's neighbors." Should I continue? "The FBI has identified at least 6 other victims of identity theft, all connected to our family network. Marcus's confidence finally cracked. That's completely different. Those were legitimate business investments where people agreed to let me use their credit for mutual benefit. Business investments, Marcus, you gambled away over $1 million in Las Vegas and lost everything in cryptocurrency speculation. There was no business. The silence was deafening. Dad's face had gone from red to pale and Mom was staring at Marcus with growing horror. $1 million, she whispered. Marcus stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You're believing government lies over your own family. They're just trying to make a normal business arrangement sound criminal. Then explain the forged signatures, Marcus. Explain the fake business documentation. Explain why you used Rebecca's social security number to open credit cards that she never applied for. I don't have to explain anything to you. His mask was completely gone now, replaced by the entitled rage of someone who'd never faced real consequences. You've always been jealous of me, always resentful that Mom and Dad believed in my potential instead of just accepting your boring, mediocre life. There it was, the real Marcus, the one our parents had protected and enabled for 26 years. Mom found her voice. Marcus, please tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't really steal from your sister and our friends. I didn't steal anything. I borrowed against future success with family support. If Sage wasn't so selfish and uptight, she'd understand that successful families invest in each other. Dad finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Son, using someone's social security number without permission is identity theft. It doesn't matter if they're family. Oh, now you care about legal technicalities. Where was that concern when you were helping me access Sage's tax returns and personal documents? The confession hung in the air like a toxic cloud. My parents' faces reflected the dawning realization that they weren't just accessories to fraud, they were the architects of a criminal conspiracy that had destroyed multiple families. I stood up slowly, maintaining eye contact with each of them. The FBI raided Marcus's apartment this morning. They seized his computers, financial records, and the Rolex he bought with my stolen money. Federal prosecutors are filing RICO charges against all of you next week. Mom started crying. Dad put his head in his hands. Marcus stared at me with pure hatred. You're destroying this family over money, he snarled. No, Marcus. You destroyed this family when you decided to commit federal crimes. I'm just making sure there are consequences. We can fix this, Dad said desperately. We'll sell the house, liquidate our retirement accounts, pay back every penny. We don't need to involve the courts. I felt a moment of pity for him, but it passed quickly. Dad, you helped orchestrate identity theft against at least 7 people. You used your real estate connections to gather personal information for fraudulent purposes. This isn't a debt that can be paid back. This is organized crime. Mom looked up at me through her tears. Sage, please. We're family. Surely we can work something out privately. 28 years of being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who cleaned up everyone else's messes. 28 years of watching Marcus get praised for mediocrity while I worked twice as hard for half the recognition. 28 years of being taken for granted and treated as a financial safety net for their golden boy's failures. We stopped being family the moment you decided to steal from me. I walked toward the door, then turned back for one final look at the people who had raised me. The federal agents outside will want to speak with all of you. I'd recommend getting attorneys, good ones. You're going to need them. Marcus followed me to the door, his face twisted with rage. This isn't over, Sage. You think you're so smart, but you just destroyed the only people who ever loved you. You'll have nothing left when this is finished. I smiled at him, the same cold smile I'd been perfecting all week. Marcus, I already have nothing left. You made sure of that when you stole my identity and destroyed my credit. The difference is, now you're going to prison. As I walked to my car, I could hear him screaming threats and accusations through the open door. Behind him, my parents sat in stunned silence, finally understanding the magnitude of what they'd participated in. The recording device captured every word. The indictments were unsealed on a Tuesday morning, and by noon the story was the lead item on every local news station. Local family accused of million-dollar identity theft ring scrolled across television screens throughout the city, accompanied by photos of Marcus being led away in handcuffs. The media attention was more intense than Agent Ross had predicted. My family's crimes hit every emotional trigger that made for compelling news coverage: family betrayal, elder abuse, financial fraud, and a victim who fought back. Within 24 hours, the story had gone national. My phone rang constantly with reporters requesting interviews, but I referred them all to Sandra Martinez, my attorney. I'd learned my lesson about trusting family. I wasn't about to trust media strangers with my story. The legal proceedings moved faster than anyone expected. Marcus had been so sloppy with his documentation, and the evidence was so overwhelming that federal prosecutors offered plea deals within the first week. My parents' attorney advised them to accept responsibility and cooperate with investigators, hoping for reduced sentences. Marcus predictably refused any plea agreement and demanded a trial, claiming he was the victim of a vindictive sister and overzealous prosecutors. His court-appointed attorney, the family assets had been frozen pending restitution determinations, looked exhausted every time I saw him on the news. The preliminary hearings revealed the full scope of the criminal enterprise. Over 3 years, Marcus had stolen approximately $2.4 million from 9 victims, including extended family members, family friends, and even his ex-girlfriend's parents. My parents had facilitated the crimes by providing access to personal documents using Mom's real estate license to gather client information and helping create fake business documentation. Uncle Jim and Aunt Linda were also arrested as part of the conspiracy, charged with using their professional positions to gather victim information. The criminal network had been even larger than the FBI initially suspected. But the most devastating revelation came during Rebecca's testimony at the preliminary hearing. Not only had Marcus stolen her identity to open fraudulent accounts, he'd also convinced her to invest her actual savings in his fake consulting business. She'd lost $40,000 of legitimate money on top of the credit damage from identity theft. I trusted him because he was family, she testified, her voice breaking. When Sage's brother asked me to invest in his business, I thought I was helping someone I cared about achieve their dreams. I never imagined he was stealing from me twice, once with my identity and once with my trust. 6 other family members and friends gave similar testimony. Marcus hadn't just committed financial crimes. He'd weaponized family relationships to systematically victimize the people who loved him most. The community response was swift and brutal. My parents were forced to resign from their positions at the local Chamber of Commerce and Rotary Club. Mom lost her real estate license, and Dad was terminated from his job at the bank where he'd worked for 15 years. Their social circle evaporated overnight as former friends realized they might have been potential victims or unwitting accomplices. Marcus's ex-girlfriend Jennifer reached out to me during the second week of media coverage. She wanted to apologize and share information that might help the prosecution's case. I should have seen the signs, she said over coffee, looking exhausted and guilty. He always had money but no clear source of income. He'd disappear for hours at a time, claiming he was working on business deals that he could never really explain. When I asked specific questions about his consulting work, he'd get angry and accuse me of not supporting his dreams. Jennifer had broken up with Marcus 6 months earlier when she discovered he'd been using her credit cards without permission. She'd reported the unauthorized charges to her credit card company but hadn't pressed criminal charges because she thought it was just relationship drama, not part of a larger criminal pattern. He told me you were jealous of his success and trying to sabotage his business. He said your parents were disappointed in you for not being more supportive of family. She shook her head. I can't believe I fell for his lies. The psychological manipulation had been as systematic as the financial fraud. Marcus had spent years crafting narratives that painted his victims as selfish, unsupportive, or jealous, while positioning himself as the misunderstood entrepreneur who just needed a little help to achieve greatness. 3 weeks after the arrests, I received a call from the federal prosecutor's office. They'd recovered approximately $600,000 in assets and frozen accounts, but they needed my input on restitution priorities. Miss Rivera, your losses were the largest, but several other victims are facing immediate financial hardship due to damaged credit and unauthorized debt. How would you like to handle the distribution of recovered assets? I thought about Rebecca, who was struggling to qualify for a mortgage because of credit damage. About the elderly church members who'd trusted my parents with their personal information during a supposed insurance review. About Jennifer, who'd been manipulated into becoming both a victim and an unwitting accomplice. Distribute it based on immediate need rather than loss amount. People who are facing housing issues or medical debt should be prioritized over my long-term credit repair. It felt strange to be making decisions about money that had been stolen from me, but it also felt like the first step toward reclaiming control over my financial future. The plea negotiations concluded a month after the indictments. My parents accepted responsibility for their roles in the conspiracy and agreed to testify against Marcus in exchange for reduced sentences. Dad received 18 months in federal prison plus 3 years of supervised probation. Mom received 12 months plus probation, with credit for cooperation with investigators. Marcus continued to maintain his innocence and demand a trial, despite overwhelming evidence and his family's testimony against him. His attorney filed motion after motion challenging the evidence, the charges, and even my standing as a victim, claiming I had somehow consented to the use of my identity. Every legal filing, every court appearance, every news story felt like another small victory. For the first time in my life, Marcus's charm and manipulation tactics were completely powerless. Federal prosecutors don't care about family dynamics or sob stories. They care about evidence and conviction rates. The trial date was set for 6 months later, giving me time to focus on rebuilding my financial life and processing the emotional devastation of losing my entire family to their own criminal choices. But the biggest surprise was still coming, and it would change everything I thought I knew about my family's motivations. The trial lasted 3 weeks, and every day felt like a masterclass in justice finally being served. Marcus's defense strategy was exactly what I'd expected. Blame everyone else, claim he was the real victim, and try to charm the jury with his practiced smile and manufactured sincerity. It didn't work. Federal prosecutors methodically presented evidence that painted a picture of calculated criminal behavior spanning several years. Digital forensics experts testified about forged signatures and falsified documents. Forensic accountants walked the jury through money trails, showing exactly how stolen funds had been gambled away in Las Vegas and lost in cryptocurrency speculation. But the most devastating testimony came from Marcus himself. Against his attorney's advice, he insisted on taking the stand to tell his version of events. His narcissism and sense of entitlement were on full display as he explained to 12 strangers how his criminal actions were actually justified business decisions. I was creating opportunities for everyone involved, he testified. My family would have benefited financially from my success. Using their credit was just a more efficient way to access the capital I needed to build something that would help all of us. The jury's expressions ranged from disgust to disbelief. One elderly woman in the front row shook her head visibly when Marcus claimed he'd been planning to pay everyone back with interest. During cross-examination, the prosecutor methodically destroyed every lie Marcus had built his defense around. Bank records showed gambling losses within days of loan disbursements. Cryptocurrency trading records revealed reckless speculation rather than business investment. Personal expenses like luxury watches and designer clothing demonstrated that the stolen money had funded lifestyle choices rather than business development. The most damaging moment came when the prosecutor played the recording from my parents' house. Hearing Marcus casually admit to identity theft while simultaneously claiming it was justified for family reasons destroyed any remaining credibility he might have had with the jury. The verdict came back in less than 4 hours, guilty on all counts. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. He was also ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, though everyone involved understood that most of that money was gone forever. My parents were sentenced according to their plea agreements. Dad served 16 months in minimum security federal prison, while Mom served 10 months in a halfway house facility. They were both released early for good behavior and cooperation with ongoing investigations into similar family fraud networks. But the real resolution came in the aftermath as I rebuilt my life from the ground up. The credit repair process took 18 months, but it was surprisingly manageable with proper legal documentation of the fraud. Banks and credit agencies are surprisingly cooperative when you have federal court records proving you were the victim of identity theft rather than someone trying to escape legitimate debts. More importantly, I discovered that losing my biological family had made room for something better. A chosen family of people who actually valued and respected me. Rebecca and I grew closer through our shared experience of victimization and recovery. She introduced me to her support group for fraud victims, where I met other people who understood the unique trauma of being betrayed by people you trust most. Jennifer became an unexpected friend and ally. Her experience with Marcus's manipulation helped her recognize similar patterns in other relationships, and she eventually became a victim's advocate, specializing in financial abuse cases. Sandra Martinez, my attorney, offered me a consulting position with her law firm, helping other fraud victims navigate the legal system and rebuild their financial lives. Using my background in financial consulting to help people recover from crimes like the ones my family committed felt like the perfect form of restorative justice. The most surprising relationship was with Agent Diana Ross, who became something like a mentor as I transitioned into victim advocacy work. She helped me understand that my family's crimes weren't a reflection of my worth or judgment. They were the actions of people who had made deliberate choices to prioritize their own immediate wants over basic human decency. 2 years after the trial, I bought a new house, this time with credit that was entirely my own and a down payment I'd earned through honest work. I invited Rebecca, Jennifer, Sandra, and Diana to the housewarming party. These women had become my real family, bound together by shared values rather than DNA. Marcus was denied parole after his first hearing and will likely serve his full sentence. My parents were released but moved to another state, ostensibly to start over, but probably to escape the social consequences of their crimes. They sent a Christmas card last year with a generic message about forgiveness and family healing. I threw it away without reading it twice. The most lasting impact wasn't financial or legal, it was psychological. For 28 years, I'd believed that family loyalty meant accepting mistreatment and cleaning up other people's messes. I'd thought that love meant being endlessly available to people who took me for granted. Recovery taught me that real family, the kind worth having, is built on mutual respect, genuine care, and shared values. People who truly love you don't steal your identity to fund their gambling addictions. People who truly love you don't manipulate you into accepting responsibility for their criminal choices. I've been asked countless times whether I regret destroying my family by pressing charges. The question always makes me laugh because it's based on a false premise. I didn't destroy my family. My family destroyed themselves through their own criminal choices. I just refused to be destroyed along with them. 3 years later, my life is better in every measurable way. I have genuine friendships built on trust and reciprocity. I have meaningful work helping other fraud victims reclaim their lives. I have financial security that I built myself without family manipulation or criminal shortcuts. Most importantly, I have self-respect. I finally understand that being the responsible one doesn't mean accepting responsibility for other people's crimes. It means taking responsibility for your own choices and refusing to enable destructive behavior, even when that behavior comes from family. So here's my question for all of you. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own well-being? Have you ever discovered that people you trusted were actively working against your best interests? And share your story, because I've learned that we're not alone in these experiences. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life justice stories. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that it's okay to protect yourself from toxic family members, even when society tells you that blood should always come first. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the family you choose is so much stronger than the family you're born into. Take care of yourselves out there and never let anyone convince you that love means accepting abuse.